We're live. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Robbin Robinson, for those of you who don't know me. I'm here to represent the Navajo-Churro Sheep Association, and I'm also one of the inspectors. And this is live, so if we have any major discussion, we'll want to hold that till later. And we've already covered the fact that the association offers a really excellent PDF. This is for the folks that will read this later. Go to the website and find that PDF file. And I will mention here again, I am not here to suggest what you should do with your breeding program. We just want to help you raise high quality sheep and register. And we're going to discuss what will register, what won't register. I'm also going to talk about a lot of myths and misinformation that have been floating around for the 24 years I've been doing this, that I think confuses some people about where they want to go with their breeding program. But first, we got to go back to Spain. Can I just tap this?
No.
No. All right. I'm going to grow up. I'll figure it out.
This one right here goes forward. Maybe. There is no mouse. Okay. I guess you could do this.
Okay. And then that's all.
Can you just start the slideshow?
Yes.
No.
How you want?
Okay, so if it's on the internet, it must be true. We're going back to Spain now here just briefly, and I'm no expert on Spanish churros, but I'm trying to get your head into a place before we move forward with our own sheep. Somebody, oh, I can't spread it open.
No. That's
Okay.
what you're gonna get.
All right, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation what even the word churro means. And with research, I have yet to find that has been a word that. So here's our modern Spanish churro. I think some of us recognize these markings and might even recognize some of their own sheep in these sheep here. I know that I've had a ewe or two in previous years that looked like one of these. This is an interesting, if you can find this article on Google, I highly recommend you find it. And unfortunately, I can't expand that for you. This particular strain of the Spanish churro is extremely close to extinction. I think they're down to like 100. They keep them all in a park. So Spain is also facing the extinction of some of their lines of churros. And in fact, I have to wonder how many may have already be extinct.
What does that say?
That's the Guardian. So if you can Google that, it's an article that was in the Guardian about this Spanish sheep line they're trying to save. So I think you could find it if you Google it. It was really interesting ad or article, and there'll be another picture here in just a minute. Oops, I keep wanting to do that because that's what I was doing before. So I think we all have you like to do that, but what I find fascinating about this picture is that this is clearly a winter scene.
Sorry, somebody wants in. I know, I'm sorry. Okay, somebody wanted in.
So these churros here, this is clearly a winter scene. And what I find interesting, and this is why I wish I had my pointer, is if you look at the legs, I guess I'm going to start to do this, the legs, see the wool on the back of these legs? So we're seeing seasonal wool on legs in the winter with our Spanish churros. Now, how am I going to lift this page up?
No favor. You want me to do this slide for you?
No, why don't you just tell me how to, because I'm using this as my guide.
Okay.
So I'd like to go there so that I can see what's next. Okay, just so I know how to do it. So there we go. There's the net there's that one. And I think we can recognize a lot of these sheep in our own flocks, though I've never seen one that hairy, but that's also a really cool churro. And these always remind me, I wish I could expand these pictures. For some reason, those remind me of Kelly Scasey when I see those sheep, though she doesn't have quite those markings. But those definitely remind me of some sheep I'll see out on the res.
Is that Zoom on the bottom? Can you zoom on?
No,
Right, yeah.
that's the Zoom program.
And there's another one, which is just, you know, this one is another one that is near extinction that they're working on. How many of us have them that look like that? There we go. Oh, this is the other rest of the article of the really endangered one, and that's a picture of the rams. And they look like lots of them that I see out on the res. So, look at this guy. And notice the differences between all of them, but they're all churros. They're all churros because they have the fleece, the same fleece structure, the luster that we want to see. And then here's this guy, and this is an older photo, and look how different his sheep look from everybody else's sheep. But the one thing they have in common is the undercoat, outer coat, and the luster. So the reason I'm showing this to you is I'm trying to get your mindset to the diversity that these churros are. There is no documentation that shows which ones came here. There is plenty of voyages which you would have learned from Richard's talk earlier about all the different expeditions that came up, all the different waves of sheep. Coronado started out with 500 or 5,000, showed up with like 25 or whatever it was. He was terrible. But then the next guy, a couple of years later, succeeded in bringing more, and we don't know. Mickey Willenberg went to Spain to study the Spanish churro flocks, and she speaks of the diversity of all of these animals and the colors that were there. And the reason I bring that up is to dispel the myth that somebody snuck in some other breed of sheep back in the 70s and 80s so that the hand spinners would have color in our flocks. And that is not true. And I'll demonstrate that later when we look at an 1850s Chiefs rug or Chiefs blanket, and there is lots of natural color in this weaving. So no, if you want to breed nothing for color, those are purebred churros. Those are churros. Nobody snuck in some other weird breed somewhere. That is one that's been floating around. So let's get on to breed actual standards. The churro is a landrace breed, and so we've already set the stage for the fact that probably a handful of different types arrived here. And then of course, whatever history you've been taught, they've been scattered throughout the Southwest, all over the place. And different cultural groups and everybody would have grabbed them and had their own take on what they did with them. And these churros would have adapted to their climate and environment. And people have their own favorite looks. Today, I can tell a Bonnie Barkus ewe from a Cindy ewe, from a Nikyle ewe. And that would have been going on 200, 300, 400 years ago. You would have had these big ranches and they would have all had their style. I can tell that in my beef breeds. My ranchers, I can tell a Jim Shoe Hereford from a Babbitt Ranches Hereford. So that is how what would have happened. And so when people talk about type and old type and new type and all this other stuff, that's irrelevant. Don't listen to that stuff. If your sheep please you, and they conform to breed standards, that's what you're going to do. As an inspector, I don't judge based on those types, and the Churro Association, like I just said earlier, we don't prefer one type over another. So, let's look at some of the differences right now between, and we'll kind of go quickly through these next. Oh, wait, no, we need to cover this. This is extremely important. Okay, breed standards. Sometimes I feel like people are insecure about the breed standards and where they came from. Like, I don't know, somebody sat around and drank wine and up and decided that this is what we were going to do for breed standards. That's so much study and work And Dr. Lyle McNeil was holding on to some of the papers from the Wingate studies. But there were many different things that were studied to come up with what these animals would have looked like. And that's why we're pretty sure about the breed standards that we have and we use today. You know, the USDA, we're involved. And then of course the Navajo elders. I mean, you talk to Irene can tell you that they didn't start seeing Kemp until these new breeds started arriving. That's an oral history. She's not old enough to know that, but that's an oral history. Those kinds of things were passed on through our different cultural, peoples that had these sheep. I can tell you another story too about somebody I just was at a party about, and he's talking about his family was the last sheep herder. His great grandfather was one of the last sheep herders here in this region. And I start talking to him. They would have, he would have probably heard it. Your family would have herded the churros or whatever. He didn't understand. He goes, "Oh, you mean the Mexican bear bellies?" And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, it is. They were called all these different things, but they were part of his family too. And he talks about a tufted rug that his grandmother had used from her grandmother's flock as a lesson, and it was on her couch, and that was the only place the cat was allowed to sleep. And I was like, "Do you know where that went?" No, that probably got thrown out when she died, and I was like, "Oh my God, all that information lost." So anyway, we can continue on. So I just want you to feel confident in the information that we as an association use to determine what is a churro. And let's look first, let's discuss type. Let's go ahead and start hitting those. So here's this shoe. And then here's this shoe. And this shoe. Go ahead. That one. And then we have that one. And then we have those. I want to end with Cindy's. Cindy, I think one more down. Slide. And what's interesting, those sheep all conform and they're all beautiful sheep. And they all look different from each other. This one has huge amounts of luster. Clean legs, but they all look different from each other for the reasons we just discussed. Let's see what I think we're looking at rams, or no. So this shoe here, this was a great example. I should have got all the photos. This gal put this on the Facebook page, and she showed a picture of the mother. Is it you? The picture of the mother is just okay. She put an excellent ram on it, and then out pops is very beautiful. So how fast we can change that in one breeding. So don't be discouraged if you start out with this and then where you're headed. That's where we're going to go. So let's continue to look at some of the different color looks. Stole that from Jana. Stole another one from Jana. And then look at this one. And this is a Bea Me and You. Is that one of Bea's? She just accidentally breeds really nice sheep. She's just not that interested in, but there it is. But notice the difference in the look. Go ahead. This is a whole flock, and I think this is Irene. Oh, no, back up one. There we go. This is Irene. This is your flock. That's at your house. Look at all the different faces and types and colors in there. That is extremely beautiful example of a diverse colored flock. Let's go down to the next one. And there's another group that looks so different. Yeah, that's a brown ewe. She was 4-horn. Looks different than I know it's not brown. Brown to me. We'll discuss that issue in a minute too. And there's another one. Look how different she looks from the prior. Let's keep scanning down. And then there's 3 different types right there. All the same age, basically. And there's, yeah, we're good thinking about kicking him out of the Association, but anyway, that was in the Kyle view.
I don't need that person on Zoom.
Oh,
Just enter the, just
Oh,
admit
admit.
on top, the blue button.
Let's see the blue button, somebody wants in.
You're saying you didn't want that person.
Oh.
Yeah, because we just happen to be on his animal. So there's a white ram. And then let's go down to the next one. And there's a white ram. I mean, and look how much different that they looked from each other. And there's one of Sherry's. And then we have this little guy. And then we have this brown. And then we go down to the next brown. And look how different they are. And we're discussing this because of all the confusion of type. So continue on. And then we have that one. Oh, that's Chester the molester. So I bought him on the side of the road. Literally, this Navajo lady was trying to sell him over at Sheep is Life. And she was way out in the parking lot, hoping somebody would notice. And he was just ugly, I thought. And we tracked him to Mickey's block. And he kept jumping the fence. I wasn't going to use him. I was maybe give him one, but he kept jumping the fence and the other rams were just busy eating all the time. And I said, any dude that isn't worried about eating and is jumping fence, I want that in my flock. So he ended up with the whole flock and he threw one of the ewes that were up there prior is what his daughter. He did a really great job, but he's very small. He was just this tiny thing, did a great job at my house, but just so different than the rest of the rams you just saw. And the lambs, I call these fluffy wuffies. Not my style. But this mature, if it hasn't already, I don't know in this wacky baby, but it beautiful. But see, we all have different tolerance levels. So you start going to Jay's lambs. I think we can, oh wait, no, go down one more slide. Keep going. So look how mature this one already is for being a lamb. There's no fuzz anywhere and beautiful handle on that animal. Go ahead. And then all of a sudden you start looking at these things come out ready to roll. I mean, they're like no fuzz, they're ready to go. And then all of a sudden you have this look in a lamb. So you see all the differences. We'll just keep scrolling because we definitely don't want to. And there's another type. Do you recognize that one? Are those all your lambs?
Yeah.
So whoever judged that class was probably Lyle, probably had a tough time placing those. But one of the things I want to bring to your attention on this photo is how beautiful the legs are, the leg structures. They've got some bone. They're not these little dainty deer-like things. That's one of my favorite things about that photo. But look at, just the difference from some of the previous lambs we just saw. Let's go down one more slide. Poor Richard. And then all of a sudden we have this lamb. So they're all correct. They're all churros and they all look different for the reason we just discussed earlier. So don't let anyone tell you that their sheep is the best and you all need to catch up with, they're all churros, especially if I pass them. This is a Navajo flock. This is the other thing that's really interesting. So on the Navajo reservation, when we run around, we see great diversity within our flocks out there. We saw Irene's flock. Let's continue down and look. This is a round cedar flock, completely different. Lots of markings, completely different than the first sheep we just looked at. Is that mixed or is that, yeah, that's mixed flock. All those beautiful browns, and he's starting from seed stock, so to speak, from his grandmother's original, and they were pretty polluted with stuff when we went there. I think it's been 3 years ago, and we started trying to register the ones that were salvageable, and then helping him pick out the ones that maybe he should get rid of. And that's one of the things I want to point out too, is when we go inspecting or if we have paperwork come across our desk, that is one butt ugly ewe. I'd never have that in my flock. Well, we don't fail it because I wouldn't want it. And when we go out to these flocks, we keep our personal opinion to ourselves unless we're invited. T's flock. We wiped out half her flock one day. I think Mick had 21 ram lambs. Well, they were yearlings. And he said, well, help me decide which ones. We wiped out everyone. I think we left him with one or two, and we weren't really thrilled with those. So we didn't leave him with very many that we didn't say he needed to get. Fortunately, those were butcherable age. He was age. He was sitting on probably several $1,000s in just fresh restaurant quality meat. So that was a good thing for him. He got to, I don't know what he ever did with them, but go ahead. And that is just another, Navajo flock out there, the diversity that we're seeing some color.
I don't. Just
And
have
some
to
more,
ask.
and also keep in mind the terrain and on some of these photos, if you're pasture raising your sheep because you live on the East Coast somewhere, or you live in the Pacific Northwest or something, you don't have rangelands. When you're breeding these animals, and we'll bring this up down the road too, but just keep in mind the environment. These sheep were range animals. They evolved in a climate where there were no fences. So they had to be smart to protect themselves from predators, and they had to travel well. Colleen goes out for a couple of days before she brings hers in for water. And that's how I ended up with one of her sheep, because Mom was so mad at this ewe because she would never drink when brought to water, that she was so mad. I was surprised she actually bothered to actually stop when she threw the sheep out at my house. And there, now you can drink your fancy bottled water. Swear to God, that's a true story. You can ask Colleen. Let's go on to the next one. So keep in mind those, and that's these shepherd animals, I think, that I took way back during that semen collection day, long time ago. Yeah. And so this is a great photo, and this is where I really wish I could blow this up. But this is a picture, this was taken in the early 1900s by a trading post that would have been up at the Grand Canyon.
What slide is in?
But you can see the diversity even within this particular flock.
You just.
Oh, yay. Well,
Somebody knows more than me.
somebody didn't tell me how
Which
to
is
do
not
that.
hard.
All right, let's go down to the next slide, because this next one is one of Mikhail's favorites. And it's important to show for anybody who is questioning things. The diversity of colors in this flock at this early date, the browns, it might be blacks, but the badgers that are in there. So clearly color wasn't introduced in the 70s by somebody that wanted to have color in our churros. They've been there. They're still there in Spain. So we talk about the differences in sheep. Sometimes it is a personal preference, climate, where you're running your sheep, what their feed source is. This is a great example of two ewes that are exactly the same age. The difference is in food availability. That is the difference. So you want to be really careful that if you want to breed yours on the smaller scale, because that's what you feel, you want to have, that you're not manipulating that you're not denying feed, because you're afraid it's going to grow to be, a larger animal. I don't know how big she's going to get, but I would imagine that if she had had a different feed source, I don't think she would ever be as tall as that one, because that's a Lenny daughter.
I see that in my block, and the reason being is usually the lamb on the left will be its winner. And the ewe on the lamb on the right is single.
Well, yeah, but these aren't related.
Yeah, but this is for sure.
Yeah, this is a feed issue, because we know that for sure, but you're right, I have that going on. One of my Andrew used through triplets, and I hate triplets. And she took care of them, but one is just tiny compared to the other, in his fleece. So yeah, so there's all kinds of different factors. Just, if you want to run smaller animals, just go find naturally smaller animals. Don't, do silly things like starve them so you can make them look like they did 300 years ago during the drought. So now we're going to talk about the explosive issue. And I don't know why this is so hard and confusing to all of us. The association is very, very clear about the wool characteristics. And remember how we came to know. Well, even more importantly, we've got very old textiles and weavings that we can also study. And in fact, myself, Mikhail, Richard, and Irene, and Zephyrin just got back from DC this month because we were able to study the archives of the American National Indian Museum. Hopefully I said that correct. And they let us in the archives. It was crazy. They had big totem poles. I mean, it was just this awesome place. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute. But if you could see what we've been seeing, you would really go back outside and reassess some of your animals, I'm thinking. Because I'm not even sure I have an animal in my flock that could spin up that nice. It is amazing, the fiber that ran. The Southwest, and this is an important message. The Southwest was full of beautiful low kemp animals. And I always say low to no, because even in a no, we can still find one in there. But they had no kemp. And if you breed for no kemp, you should be proud of that. The insinuation that people are giving up other characteristics so that they can have a no kemp animal is absurd, because that could happen with any of our characteristics that we're breeding for. Let's say we're trying to breed really hard for, you know, these beautiful clean legs that we're willing to accept a high kemp animal. I'm pretty sure that if we're going to be breeding for low kemp in our animals, we're intelligent enough to also consider the other characteristics that need to be in our sheep. We need to see low kemp, and the association allows for up to 5%, and it looks like a lot when you look at a lock. That's marginal. 2% and less is ideal. Anything over, we're failing. And let me tell you how kemp works. It is a hollow fiber that grows and breaks off, grows and breaks off, grows and breaks off during the cycle of the growth of fleece. Guess what happens? If you have a ewe or an animal that's just constantly scratching, but doesn't have bugs, that might be why. Because those little fibers, and they got little points on each end, are in the skin on those sheep. So really, you're breed for the low kemp. That's probably the only thing I will tell you to do, that I would probably definitely say that shouldn't be your choice. A lot of things that we see, in that lackluster, I'm for some reason seeing more of, that last batch came through. The inadequate outer coat or no undercoat. We see the inadequate outer coat more often than not. And then of course, crimp. I just don't see that problem. I think we all know what crimp is. So we're just not seeing that in our searches that often. Usually the animal's ugly to begin with, and we open it, we know it's because it's something else.
I think you should make a point of saying defined crimp, because all breeds of sheep have a wave which is related.
See, this is why I love him being here, because I don't use the fiber. I don't use it. And if you don't, you still need to know how to properly grow. But he's right, a defined crimp. And you know, I think we can all see that. I might have a picture of that later. I don't know. But let's keep going down one. And I think we just kind of discussed marginal. When we inspect and these things come across the desk and you might be insecure, I don't know if this thing's going to pass or not. Well, let us make that decision for you. But sometimes if there's other factors going on, we'll fail that animal. But if it is definitely a churro, looks like a churro, everything is going great for it, but it really could use more luster, we're going to pass it. So we start to weigh out things, you know, if it reminds us of a whole bunch of other stuff, we're going to fail it. So, the grease. Saw desert run ram years ago, full of grease. So I would never use that animal, and they're too dense. They're just too dense. These are supposed to be range animals. They shouldn't be this wide, at 6 months. These things are like 2-3 pounds of wool. In there, she said there's only 1 pound of wool. And all of a sudden you're getting 15 pounds of wool. You're like, remember, these things have to run the range. That's how they evolved. Let's go down to, okay, so that one I can't, well, I probably could expand it, but I'll try to point it out. This is what a coarse fiber looks like. And then this goes all the way to a synthetic fiber. So we're coarse haired, but there is a variety of coarse hair. We have soft, nice handle. Turn that phone off. And we can scrub the kitchen sink with, that's how coarse. And you know what? We're gonna pass all those. As long as they had proper lock formation and the correct amount of hemp, we are gonna pass all the scales of coarseness. Because those are still, but that's up to you whether or not you want to keep that animal in your flock. So this next photo is super interesting. Connie Taylor sent this to me. This is one of those places where I really wish I could expand this photo, but maybe I can still see it. This is the Kempe fleece that she just got a hold of, and she's spinning it up. See all these hairs? See all the hair? That's all Kemp. Okay, so let's go to the next picture real quick.
Connie's a master fiber artist.
Oh, I know. This is an 1850s era Chiefs blanket. So with the visual of the Kempe fiber I just showed you, could you imagine making this? Let's look at that's why I wish I could just, that photo. There is so much luster and so much shine. That Kempe fiber, could it really have made this? This is proof. This is proof that the land was roaming with plenty of low to no Kemp animals in the Southwest. So please feel free to breed and breed away your very low Kemp animals and know that they are official, real churros. This next one, this is a 1750s era, and this is another thing where I wish this was on a television screen. This is a 1750s era Mexican Rossi. Satillo? Was that the Satillo? 1750s. So much luster, not a speck of Kemp.
It was a little more coarse than Navajo.
Oh, Navajo weaving. Yeah, so, but it is so shiny, there's no Kemp. So let's go back to that first picture with the Kempe fiber. Could you have imagined that? It would not be possible to make that. It's not possible. So you do what you want. If you want to breed really high Kemp animals, we're not going to pass them. But just remember that we also had animals that roamed the land that did not have Kemp. So be proud of your low Kemp girls. Let's go down to the next one. So this leads me to a very important story. This is so when we go to this, we go on this trip to DC. Nikyle had asked ahead to see what was it, like 9 tufted. They went everything from just basic pads, saddle pads, whatever, because we really wanted to see the lock formation on these. And the ages that ranged on these was really from the late 1800s all the way to the 60s. And I think we couldn't pinpoint this one, or you guys couldn't. We thought this could have been a 1930 to 1960s, if I recall. But the notes that I have written down that these 3 determined was that it was very dense and that it was very low luster. But what's very important in this collection is that's when we start seeing Kemp show up. And we start seeing Kemp show up in the warp. And it was nasty. And so we had this huge table. You had to walk around it to get to the other side. Had a big paper.
Climb on it.
Zephyrin was climbing on it. And I looked behind me, and these are all spread out. And I looked at the table, and it was just a disaster from the Kemp. 125 plus years later is still shedding. Kemp is not an innocuous fiber that you shake out and then go about your business making. It is there forever. and it continues to make a mess. And it was so interesting. So behind us on this rack was all of these other pieces that weren't tufted that we wanted to examine and look at. And I said, we gotta sweep this table first. We can't put these beautiful new pieces on this table. So we removed all the tufted rugs that got moved over there where they could put them up. And we swept it, and it was funny because it was a little hand broom, and I can still hear it. And I had the garbage can, and you can hear it go. All that hemp. Here we are, 125 years later, and we still have hemp shedding out of these. Now, they all have different versions of stories about why some of these belong to an eccentric collector in New York City. Or you weren't gonna use your best fiber on a piece that you're gonna throw on a saddle, use as a saddle pad. So you were gonna use that Kimpy old, you out back and use her fiber for your saddle. We don't know why. We're still trying to figure out why. We really do see after 1850 on, and I'm not gonna talk much about this study because we're still finishing it. But in my mind, and this is just my opinion, we start to see those Kemp levels grow after 1850. So we start to see a mix of really beautiful stuff. And now we start to see the Kemp show up, especially in the Hubble Trading Post collection. That's when we really start to see the Kemp. So we weren't sure, is this a regional issue or is this just because, as Irene says, that's when we started seeing Kemp arrive when these new breeds started being introduced. So it could be argued, and this is just my opinion, that if you have a bunch of Kempy sheep, you're really reflecting the churros from the 1850s forward and not backwards. Because we didn't find any Kemp in anything older than 1850. And those Chiefs rugs or blankets, amazing, just amazing. We got to see, was that Sitting Bull's?
Sitting Bull.
Yeah.
Sitting Bull's chief blanket that he had traded for from the Navajo, and it was a little worn, smelled like smoke and tobacco. It was covered, it still had soot all over it, and what was the most amazing thing? The luster. The luster that was still in this, the weaving on that, you'll never do with that Kempy first picture that I just showed you. You'll never, ever replicate those pieces with a Kempy fleece. Let's go ahead.
Even those tufted blankets smell like sheep still.
Yeah, they still smelled like sheep. It was fascinating. Okay, so this is a picture of Irene's. I don't know why that got off center.
Just on Zoom.
Oh, sure. We need to have one of the millennials here.
Yes.
So this is Irene's winning fleece that she was like this year. That's good. Because I would definitely have blown it up. But if you look at the flocks, the locks here, and that's why I wish I had a better screen for this, you'll see no Kemp in there at all. Let's show the next slide. Look at this lovely example of the Kempy lock. So you just saw her fleeces and her locks, and here is Kemp. And it is all these darker fibers, and they're disorganized and they're busted out and they're just all over. That's what Kemp looks like in your animals if you're not sure what that looks like. Let's go to the next slide. This is where some of the detail that I really wish I could show you is going to get lost. Here's another one with lots of Kemp. This one's kind of greasy too to boot. And the other thing they're really lacking is luster. I mean, you might, I don't know, maybe you're gonna make one of those Scottish kilts, or what do they make, the ones with the high Kemp level that they make those tweeds or whatever. Unless you wanna make a tweed, you don't want that in the block. So let's go on to the next one. And I don't care what anybody says, we have proof that the land was full of beautiful. Oh, this is a flock or a lock that was just recently collected, no undercoat. So not only does it have Kemp, it has no undercoat, and it had absolutely no luster whatsoever.
So the person who that lock came from claims that they've bred back to the 1700s, and that's what the sheep look like. And I was sitting with Tana Banatani, who is a world-renowned weaver. I mean, she's won so many awards all over the world.
I know.
her and I, as well as her mom, because we had a huge chunk of that, tried to spin it. And because there was no inner coat, those outer coats were just not catching and they were breaking apart. And the count was just wiry and everything, so.
Yeah, the last 3 samples, this one included, we will fail all day long. And when we see it, whether it's a mail-in, and you actually see it more often on mail-ins than anything, but definitely when we do on-sites. So, let's go to the next slide. I'm trying to remember which. Oh, that's another one that's, pretty kempy, lacked luster. Just a completely useless fiber. It makes great mulch. I mean, I had a bunch last year that, because they got too much vegetable matter, I put an ad, free mulch, and people cleaned me out. And then they started messaging me, I put them around my trees, I put them around my trees. That's a great place for them. They're full of vegetable matter. So let's go on to the next one. This is, a sample that Jay kindly sent me, and which is why I had better resolution. No chem. Very shiny and lustrous. That's what you want to see in your sheet. Yeah, we could. Oh, you can see the luster there now.
Luster is,
We're gonna go over luster here in just a minute. We're gonna cover luster. Lots of luster, proper lock formation, no count, no to 0. The next one is, another one that, we could slide that down so we could see the top of that lock. And while we're discussing this issue, your chem levels will change often if your animal starts to get older. So if I look personally at a 15-month-old lamb or, animal, and it's already got chem, I'm gonna fail that. But if I look at a 6-year-old ewe and she's got some chem, I'm gonna pass it because that's gonna be a normal progression in these sheep. So, and that is not something they're gonna give their lamb. But like we discussed earlier, if you have, like Cindy was saying, she's not seeing chem until it's 100 years old, that keep it, because that's, so there's another one. There's no, hemp in that one. Lots of luster. And then the next photo, which is where it would have been great if I had control of this. This is, that was a 2-year-old ewe. And if you could see what we're seeing, you would see that had high luster, no count. And interestingly enough, she had the ugliest lamb I've ever seen. No outer coat is the ugliest thing. I tried to sell her as mutton, couldn't get her sold as mutton, so I just went ahead and bred her Lenny. Because I know she's well bred, so I don't know where that monster came from. But anyway, that happens to all of us. So I just want you guys to know that's a very normal part of the process of these sheep. All of a sudden out comes this thing. Let's go to the next thing. And again, this is where I wish our resolution, this is one of my lambs. Get out there, look at your sheep, park them, open it up, look. And we'll talk about handle here in a minute. So let's go on to, because you really do need to consider handle. The next picture is just kind of a,
Sorry.
no, I'm glad it's just not me that doesn't know how to use your computer.
I don't know how to use my computer, what you're saying, which is true.
I know. So anyway, that was over at Andrew's flock, and I was doing inspections for him. You just really want to part those fleeces. When you part that fleece, you want to see an organized array of fibers. You don't want to see crisscrossing, and if it's hard to open, that's cross fibering or threading, fibering. You don't want to see cross fibering, and you'll know that if you go to open it. They're hard to shear too. They're very hard to shear, and then when you go to work with it, it feels like it's been felted. It's really hard to work with. So that's another issue that we've actually seen. I don't see it that often in the mail-ins, but I recently caught some last year in some sheep, and that is very heritable. That is definitely something they'll pass on to their animals. And in fact, everybody related to that animal all have it. So let's go down to the next one. We're going to start discussing handle. There's Lenny. He's for sale, by the way. He won't register because of his horns. We'll talk about that issue in a minute. Nikyle spotted him. He comes from the Hubble Trading Post closed breeding program. That open and lustrous fleece is what you want to see on your animals. Nikyle taught me that when we're inspecting the sheep out on the field, you want to get in there and you want to feel your animal, and you want to feel that puffiness and movement of your fleece. If it feels hard, even though the lock formation is correct, it'll feel hard. And you'll notice the difference, even though the lock formation, and we're still gonna pass it. Because if the lock formation is correct and the Kemp levels are good and it's got luster, handle is a whole nother ball game that we don't pass or fail if we find, we find bad handle or good handle. But oftentimes bad handle goes hand in hand with other reasons so this is a great story. This next picture, and I want to encourage, well, that's just another example of what a movement of fleece will look like. This next one here, this is one I want to encourage you. So I gave this fleece to Nikyle just so he could have, and he snuck behind my back and entered it in this last fiber show, and it won Reserve Grand Champion. And the reason I bring this up to you is he has descended down from the nastiest, kempiest ewe that I found at the fair, and this little girl was being made to show this ewe. She hated this ewe with a passion, and it got a white ribbon. You know how hard it is to get a white ribbon in 4-H? And I felt so bad for her. It was a Gary Navajo ewe. And so I bought it, took it home. And what I did was I bred her to a good ram, and I just kept her next best ewe lamb, and then I sold her. Down the road she went. And then fast forward, I don't know how many generations, her lamb wins Reserve Grand Champion. So I'm trying to encourage you, you take what you got, put good rams on them, but move forward in your breeding program with purpose and with knowledge. And hopefully we're teaching you a few things today, so we can skip over. That was his fleece.
I cried skirting that fleece, by the way.
It had animal crackers in it. The sheep or the mice put it in there. So let's talk about, I know, let's talk about luster. That's what luster looks like. And you can see it there. Oh, this is a funny story between Jay and Nikyle. Nikyle sells me this ewe, and I'm so proud of it. I put it on Facebook, and Jay gets on there and goes, "Hey, that's my ewe. He hasn't paid me for it yet."
I did.
She was a very pretty 4-horned ewe, and that one picture of the ewe a couple slides before is actually one of her descendants, and she's actually got 4 horns. So I still have her descendants in my flock. Let's go to the next picture. Luster, and we keep going down. Luster. And if you know what I find helpful is I go out and take a lot of photographs of my animals, and then I go home and put them on the computer, and that's when I can spot the trouble. I can't see it oftentimes when I'm looking at them. Do whatever it helps
Are you
you.
looking for the shine? Is that?
The shine, look at the luster, the shine. That's how you make that shiny Chiefs blanket, is because of that luster. And you should be able to see it. Go ahead next. You should be able to see that in your lambs, like on the day they're born, you'll see that luster. It starts then. Let's go down. Oh, so the next one, oh yeah, some more luster. Maybe you get the message. So here's a picture of a sheep.
This one?
Yes, go on
Oh,
down one
next
more. Yeah. This is what a sheep looks like with no luster. And cross fibering going on. This is a sheep that one of our new growers bought out of desperation to get something. And it's possible, I told him it's possible it had heads or something too, and that's what a lot of that was, because I'll show you an example of that in a minute. There's just no luster on this animal, but I love the rest of the ewe. I was just over there yesterday because I dropped them off 2 bred ewes. And the thing is, I love everything else about the ewe. The way she's built, her legs, her face. But that fleece, and I said, well, it's winter, let's wait till spring. And I said, but I would go ahead and treat her as if she has bugs. I'd go ahead and maybe hit her with some neck or whatever. This next slide. I wish this would have scanned better. This is a ewe I had in my early years. You know how they do those car wraps? And they make the car, it goes from being shiny to all of a sudden dull because they put those wraps around them. That's what she was like. Somebody wrapped her. There was nothing.
Doesn't look like much outer coat either.
No. She got called out. Yeah,
What year was that picture taken?
that would have been taken in about 2003, maybe.
The pattern,
Yeah.
so it's not.
No, it is, why we're doing this class is to help you decide what you might want to call. And again, I'm not telling you what you should call, you might have a reason and you're gonna go a direction with this. So that's your decision to make, don't let anybody tell you what your decision should be. This next slide. Okay, this is one of my found on the side of the road use. Found her on the side of the road. I used to drive the garbage truck for Waste Management. I kept driving past this yard. And I finally swung in there and I talked her into selling me that sheep. Come to find out, it came from Leon Sozzi's flock. I haven't seen him in ages. I sheared her. It was horrible. I used electric shears. She had so many bugs that she was covered in blood from the bugs, not her, from the bugs. She was being eaten alive. And this is her several months later. Now you can see the luster. So if you have an animal that you just brought in, give them a chance to regrow that fiber in your environment. I can sell a dog to Sherry and she takes it to Texas, and the next thing I know, it's on Facebook, and I'm like, what the heck? It didn't look like that at my house. So let's go to the next one. Okay, this is where I really wish I could expand. This is off the PDF. This ewe right here has no outer coat, and that's what I really wanted to show you. And that looks like the ewe I was just talking about that I can't figure out came from that other beautiful ewe I have. But no outer coat. There's environmental issues, like maybe they're chewing on each other, or they've been rubbing on a tree, or maybe she should have been sheared 2 or 3 months earlier, or whatever, where we sees that. But you know, if they're at the 4-month, 5-month mark and they have no outer coat, do what you want with it, but I personally would kick it out of my flock. Let's talk about udders. And we're going to talk about that. This is outside of our scope of inspection. We're never going to fail an animal because they have a crappy udder. But we do need to talk about what our udders need to look like. High and tight. These are range animals. They travel. They've got to travel far and hard. And this will produce a lot of milk. And Sherry, who is our resident sheep milker, can tell you that these nice high and tight udders give plenty of milk. The other thing that you need to be cognizant of, we need those nipples to go this direction and not this direction. Lyle talked about that in one of the show rings one day, because they tend to get mastitis with those nipples pointing down. So, and again, I'm not going to fail your animal if its udder is upside down because it's not in our breed standards. So let's go to the next one. Just to, you know, there's another really great udder. Great udder attachment, great udder floor. Any dairy animal needs to have that formation. You can tell by the look of the condition of that ewe, she's putting all her energy into producing milk for her lambs. So she's not being stingy. So what's the next topic? Tails.
Robin, before you move away from udders.
Mhm.
So at the AGM in Moab, like 2 or 3 years ago, I was judging the sheep show, and there was this crowd favorite ewe who on the hook was just so stunning. And everybody expected her to win. But the ewe that I placed grand champion and best of show out of everybody, I looked at her udder because she was nursing some lambs, and they were like really nice, teats going outward. And when I went to go touch it, she knelt down as if she was going to feed the lamb. So in my opinion, I want to see that ewe, because when I did that to that perfect ewe, she just jumped up and was bucking and was wild. And I told the crowd, I asked, I said, why, or can you guess who I'm gonna give the best to show to? And they're like, oh, the pretty tall one with nice brown fleece. I'm like, no, I'm giving it to this mother here
Mhm.
who wasn't even meant to show because she brought her lambs with her. And they're like, what? And
Well,
it's-
these
and
are
it's-
important aspects that we need to consider. They're outside of the breed standards that we talk about, that we learn in the show ring. And I have made we have all made ourselves vulnerable a lot through the years showing. And all of us have had dogs and all of us have walked away with our share of grand champion ribbons, but that's how we learn. And that's the other issue is something that Doc talked about one day. And the other issue is your ewes should be feminine. They should look feminine. They should look like girls. I'll never forget when I was shadow judging with Lyle, and it was a huge ewe lamb class. Beautiful, beautiful, huge class. We got to this one that Bill was showing, and I whispered to Doc, I go, that's kind of a awfully masculine, I didn't like it. And Doc goes, oh, it's all right. We keep working. All of a sudden we looked over and he's peeing from here. Not peeing from the right place. I said, well, that explains that. And Bill was all embarrassed. He was all embarrassed. He'd actually grabbed one of his wethers. So, yeah, tails, unfortunately, it's a pain in the butt. It's been a nemesis. I hate it. It's bad enough you got to go out with these beautiful photos and do this, that, and the other, but tails. I haven't personally seen it, but I think one of us were talking one day, one of our inspectors did catch a fat tail somewhere. But when you go to register, let's go ahead and look at that next slide. Just take a look at a picture of that, I used to shave it and take it, so they could see it better. When we get our, the mail-ins, just take that. The next slide will show you what a fat tail looks like, and it's gross.
I've seen
Probably
some people
tastes
put-
good, but it's gross.
I've seen people put cardboard underneath.
I've done that so that I could demonstrate that it's a tiny tail. I overkill, I want my animal to pass so bad. And so anyway, that's what a fat tail looks like. And our fat tail breeds really do resemble our churros. And that's why we still look for those tails. And I understand it's a pain in the head. So let's go down to the next one. And okay, recent and growing undesirable traits. The beards. This was Mikhail and Jay's catch. Just go down to the next. Oh, well, yeah, maybe it'll come up. So this is a picture that Mikhail sent me. He sent me actually other photos too, but I didn't want to overwhelm you of what he looked like when he was younger, what that looks like in a lamb and a beard. And I'm sure that Mikhail could easily definitely explain it better, but it's very bristly. It goes from here all the way down into that's not the chest. And it's very bristly. And like Mikhail says, it often has down with it that you could confuse to be wool. If you have any questions, scan it and send it in to one of us, and we'll be happy to solve that problem for you.
So it's long.
Mhm.
And
So
bristly.
There's a difference between the manes and the beards we're seeing. The manes start behind on the pole, and it's just coarse hair that goes all the way around the neck and down the throat. Beards start at the bottom of the jaw and just go straight down the throat. And
But-
they're all bristle-like fibers,
Like horsetail.
like
hair.
horsetail.
And
And-
neither one of them are acceptable.
No,
I mean, it's not on the breed standard yet,
but we
That's
have
favorable.
agreed. We have agreed.
But-
Fail them.
Because I, in my lifetime, have bought thousands of pounds of wool, and I've had manes slip through, and even when it's commercially processed, that mane bristle does not have the same characteristics of the wool fiber. So as I explained earlier, and I don't see this on res animals at all, it just has no ability to catch on itself, so there's a lot of breakage in the arms. And that would ruin a whole lot. And if I'm paying $5 a pound for premium colored wool, I want my money's worth.
Yeah, and plus, and like you say, it goes hand in hand with high chem levels at some point. So I think we already agreed, even though it hasn't, we probably should get that added on the website. We have agreed as inspectors, we voted to say we'll not, in fact, we just failed one the other day that had a bit, have that going on. So this next one is an example of a ram, and I had asked Kyle about it. His feelings were, it was just a break at the shoulders that went into a longer fiber. So you really always want to get in there and feel that.
Wait, what are we looking at?
Well, look at his, all this extra hair
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I would call that a mane because, but no,
But if you look at the shoulder, there's a break in the length that makes the front bulb appear longer.
Uh-huh.
But you can see that it has luster and it has a density to where I can tell as a seasoned inspector that it has an undercoat. As opposed to that other ram who has no luster in that
Mhm.
mane and it's, you know,
Yeah.
it looks less dense.
yeah. So like I say, if you have a question, because it's still something we're still sorting through and a lot of people are confused about it, take a sample of that and send a scan of it to any of your inspectors. Jade, Nikyle, Connie, we're all really, have paid attention to this issue. So let's see what the next problem is. Horns. Oh, I just looked. We just talked about Lenny, that beautiful open fleece, but he'll not register because of those horns. I choose to use them, but he will not register. So it's a personal preference. I don't get personally that wrapped up in it. Did you have a question? No question back there? Okay. So this is an example of a four horn I had. And you can see what's going on into the side of his face. I chose to use him for a round because I always say the worst that can happen is you have more to eat. And he threw some really beautiful animals for me. But what was interesting, the older he started getting kemp. And I thought he was getting kemp a little too soon for his age, so he's gone. I wouldn't have used him again anyway, he's related to everybody on the block. Let's go down to the next one. This animal right here, I barely got through him, but those horns were, real close. A lot of people are very firm on their horn issue. And just remember that if you choose to take a chance on one with troubling horns, we're just not gonna pass it. But if it has these beautiful characteristics, like, oh, I can't help but use them. And these are nicely spaced horns there. Let's go down to the next one. The next one is,
I have a question.
yes,
How far does the horse have to be away from the cheeks? Like, to be considered?
I think you should be, it shouldn't interfere with his jaw movement at all.
You need to be able to put your hand through.
Yeah, you would want to be able to put your hand through. Lenny, I was able to shear no problem. I was able to stick my hand shears in there and shear them. But the other day I roped them and the rope got caught up and it took me a minute to get the rope out. So, they really just, the reasoning why we have these horn issues is because we just don't want it to interfere. And the four horns is where we start to see this whole picture here shows really nice proper placement of horns. If you're gonna do the four horn, not interfering with anything, they're not forward facing, there's nothing that's gonna prevent them from eating. But then if you look at this next slide, and these are all awesome. Well, we're not gonna pass him. And the other one's questionable. So beautiful, awesome rams, but with horn issues. It's your personal preference. As far as I'm concerned, we're just not gonna pass them. Next slide is who? Oh, this is the one that Mikhail just posted. This was taken in 1902. Another great example of correct four horn placement. Don't get so, I gotta have a four horn that you settle for just any old one. Make sure it has a good fleece and everything else lines up. People get really caught up in the four horn thing and ignore the rest of the issues. Let's go down to the next one. And this is from the association page. You can go to the PDF and see further example of horns. We're just not going to pass. These are just right here. The next one is a great example of a really nice one. Yeah. But that being said, because it's so white and like that, he tends to be brittle. Every time he gets in a fight, he bleeds. So Because actually his grandfather had horns just like that, and he had lost one of them in a fight. So, the density in those horns could be better. All right, let's talk about teeth. And this is another one where Nikyle really started bringing to light that we weren't paying attention to that issue as well. We had a little bit of high drama one year over the fact that he failed an animal over a teeth issue. And that had to be solved. We all stood behind Kyle. If Kyle had seen the animal, we're not gonna, change his decision. But, he caught one out of my trailer last year. I didn't spot it. He goes, Robin, look at her teeth. I think she was parrot mouth, I think. I was like, I've never, ever had this in my thought. That was the first time. So let's go to the picture of what it really, we need to see. And this is why we show teeth and show rings. This is why we show teeth. This is what we want it to look like. Everything needs to line up there. And then let's look at this. Next slide. Isn't she cute? Isn't that the cutest thing? I mean, I want that to meet me as a feeder every day. She's just so happy. I don't know. I don't even know if that's a churro. It's just a picture I found somewhere. I don't know what that is. But let's go to the next one. And we definitely don't want that. So pay attention to your teeth. Pay attention to your teeth because that is inheritable. It's heritable, not inheritable. Heritable. We just, those are things that we will not fail you for, but we won't necessarily catch in your mail-ins. So you need to do a good job of policing yourself and saying that, okay, this wouldn't pass a field inspection. So, maybe I gotta get rid of this animal. What's the next problem we're dealing with?
Robin, can I mention the bike?
Oh, go ahead. Yes.
So the reason I failed that ram on the on-site inspection is because he was in a group with lambs and a 15-year-old ram. The lambs and 15-year-old ram were all nice and plump. They looked healthy. And I'm like, why does this guy look like he's struggling? And then I looked at, I could just tell that his bite was off. So he was unable to, and they live in California where there's abundance of grass during, the winter season. So he should have been nice and well-rounded, right? And that grass was mowed down in their little paddock to like half an inch, where the other sheep with proper bites could eat and properly carry themselves. Whereas that one with the bad bite wasn't able to and he was struggling.
Yeah, there's good reasons why, and this would apply to anything you're raising, if it's horses or cows or whatever.
Another reason to be watchful for that too, because if you have a lamb that keep way over shooting, they could tear the udder up
Yeah.
and cause mastitis.
Yep.
I had that happen a long time.
Highly heritable.
Yes, it is. Face and leg wool. As an inspector, like if I had a lamb that came out looking like these, I would be like, oh, what the world is going on in my breeding program? A lot of your colors hang on to some of that lamb stuff for a while, and some of them come out and they're perfectly, your tolerance level is your business, what you want to tolerate with. I personally don't want to wait for 2 years to see something happen. But other people's are more than happy to because there's this really great color they want. There's no right or wrong. We're not going to pass that. And you shouldn't even want that in your flock either. But these other marginal ones here oftentimes are the time of year, the season, age, and stage of development. If I see that on a 6-year-old animal, that doesn't make me happy. But if I see it on a 1-year animal or 18-month animal, I'm inclined to not be quite as judgmental. But that's a tolerance level. And just remember that if you really want that animal registered, wait until it looks its best. Wait until the middle of summer, send us a really great photo of that. Even if in the wintertime, it gets a little woolly there. That's, like again, a personal preference. Let's get on to the next one. And then we touch on legs. Oftentimes age and stage of development, however, even if I have a young animal with this much already going on, that I just send that down the road. Again, that's a personal preference issue. You might want to wait and see, and you might keep that animal Again, wait until it looks really good in the middle of summer and send us in your, form. And that'll help you get your registration through. What's this next problem? Oh, yeah, this is a mature ewe that I had, that would do that in the middle of winter. So we see that in winter. In summertime, she always did that. She would shed and she would be this beautiful animal. So that, a lot of that stuff is normal that you guys see. If you ever are wondering if it's gonna be a problem, please don't be insecure about it. Please send it in to us and say, hey, do you think this is gonna be a problem? We'll be happy to help you with that. And if any of your animals remind me of that, it's an automatic fail. And trust me, we see these with guard hairs, with outer coat, and it still looks like that, and it's an automatic fail. If it reminds me of another breed, we're failing that animal. It's not ready yet. Keep putting a good ram on that and get rid of that, but that ain't gonna pass. So let's talk about more issues outside of the breed standards. Let's talk about legs. These are range animals that are designed to travel long ways on nasty, hard ground. I'm not telling you what to do, but I know that Sam got in trouble from Jim Kai's because she was increasingly raising more and more deer-like looking creatures. And he said, your animals are gonna break down sooner rather than later with those thin legs. The reason I love this ewe, not only is she just very typey, look at those beautiful legs. That thing is built to travel. It's built to travel long distances and travel on rocks. Consider those in your own breeding program. I mean, if you like them with skinny legs, that's your business. But just remember, we're needing to breed these as if they're gonna go back out on the range. And consider, I brought in a ewe years ago, from a pasture bred. It took her a year to not limp at my house because my ground was so hard. And my sheep at that time were going out a couple miles a day, running the range. And it took a year for her feet to finally harden up. Let's go down to the next one. And we've already seen that picture. That's the thing I like about those legs. Let's go down to the next one. And there's Mikhail's house. And that's a great example of good legs, but the terrain that these guys live in. So if you're going to be living in Maine and raising these, pretend like you're preparing them for this environment when you decide what you're going to call out. Because this is the reality. This is how they evolve. So this is why they're here all these hundreds of years later, because they were built to adapt to this environment. It was much like Spain. Let's go down to this next picture. Caught this, our last inspection spotted it, weak pasterns. I'll never forget the time I went to go show this beautiful picture perfect lamb that I had. I was so proud of him. He was so beautiful. And Doc put him at the bottom of the glass, said those pasterns, you don't want those on his daughters. They will break down walking in the rocks. Maybe give him a year or two, maybe he'll outgrow it. No, you either come out ready to roll or, so he went to be butchered. But watch those pasterns. That is very important. Those strong pasterns. In fact, let's go to the next slide. Those pasterns, yeah, is correct. And those are true for any livestock you're raising. So watch those. We get so caught up in the beauty of our, oh, it's got the perfect fleece ever, but it's walking on fetlocks. It's like, gotta get rid of it. High belly lines. That's the next slide. This is a great example of a ewe I had years ago. I pinpointed the ram that was doing it, but this belly line is real high, and I took this picture because it really illustrated it really well. And I have seen these in inspections. So, and they were related. It is heritable. So watch that belly line, needs to come down there. So that's something that we see, but that's something I would pass and did pass. It's not in the breed standards. It's just, that's a personal management issue that you need to decide on. So let's go through, let's see, what's the next slide? So let's talk about the unseen characteristics, mothering skills, ability to travel, ability to do well on forage in the middle of winter. predator savvy. Those are all things that are define the Navajo-Churro that we don't see in your inspection papers that you have to self-police yourself about. Prolapsed uteruses, I forgot to mention that, are another thing that's heritable. If you have a ewe that had that, she needs to, because that is nothing you want in your bloodlines. But anyway, these are things that you need to police yourself on, be mindful of when you're raising things. And this is the danger, and this is the concern that I have with people who raise these churros outside of the Southwest. I always call them big fat Billigana barn sheep. You really need to consider that if you're having to use, I mean, I appreciate that you do use a heat lamp and you want your animal to be comfortable. I have nothing about that. But if you have to do that to get your animals to live, that's not a churro. That is not a churro characteristics. These guys evolved from 450 years of range living, no barns, no heat lamps. So, and no hay in the winter. They had to go out and live with no hay. I know, and that's tough. That's why our sheep always live so, because we feed them hay. But we want to be, and I'm not advocating we shouldn't, but anyway. And these are just different pictures you can kind of sort of go through quickly, just to remind the people who are not from the Southwest, these guys travel for miles. And in some cases, they're not brought to water for several days. And so they have to be able to get out there and live on this stuff. Let's go to the next one. Another example of probably who knows how many miles I had to walk to get there. This one, I think Jay just posted with his sheep. You're probably looking at going, what in the world are they eating out there? You know, they actually prefer browsing all this stuff, I think, than because mine will walk right over grass. Yeah. They'll just walk right over grass and they'll head straight to the globe mall that they know is 2 miles out there. So let's go to the next one. Just more terrain. You can keep going there for a minute. See the rocks they got to travel through to get the next one. There they are, all grubbing around for the now, I'm not advocating that you have your lambs born in the middle of winter. I don't have a barn. I use pallets as lambing jugs. I do this as a reason to drink, probably. I don't know, because every year I go through this, but these, I've never lost a lamb. I've never lost a lamb in all my years of doing this. These guys are built for this, because this could happen in May. Okay, this is probably February, but this happens in May too, and we can't wait until it is all. Let's go to the next one. Yeah. You know, how many times I went out at midnight and pulled sheep out of snowbanks, because that's where they decided to have their lambs. But thrived, did well, awesome. I'm not saying that you should kick your sheep out of your nice warm barn to test their ability to thrive, but just remember, if your lambs are having a hard time making it with a heat lamp and on straw, you need to probably get rid of that animal. Let's get on to the next one. Okay, I've been asking this question for 24 years and I just always love the answers. Roy Katie, sheep with big guts. He feels it takes them longer to fill up. And I don't like them with big guts either. I try to avoid them just because I don't like the look. Colleen, this really irritates her. Sheep that walk right over perfectly good food will find even better. She needs them to not do that and to get busy. And then also she's the one that dropped the ewe off at my house that would not drink water. The more popular one, runners. And if you are pasture raising your animals, you will not understand what this means. This means that these little buggers take off and just run everywhere, and the whole flock follows them. I had to pull one out of my flock because she insisted she kept trying to go into coyote land, I called it. And the rancher said, I don't care if you run your sheep over here, but keep them over here. Don't let them go here. And guess where that little wanted to go? Every time. So I pulled her out and she was sold. That is a very popular one. I have actually picked up a couple of nice sheep through the years because they're runners and my Navajo friends, I take her. Okay, I'll take her. Stragglers, ones that are left behind. They cause problems, management issues. You know, everybody needs to stick together. I don't want to have to go back and get somebody that got high centered over my neighbor's house. Kemp is the other issue that everybody, was in agreement on. Bad mothers, boy, that one. If they have that lamb and walk away for even a minute, you need to, yeah, freezer. That is, one of the main important characteristics of our churros. Their mothering skills are amazing. Keep that in mind when you're raising these animals in a non-range environment. They have to be good mothers. And wild. Oh man, I had two this year. Just every time I go in the crowd to do anything, they're just bouncing off the woodwork. I'm like, what did I ever do to you? You know, but these people, these Navajos, especially your elderly ones, they go out in these corrals and they're working. They don't like the big horned rams at all because they don't want to deal with that. In fact, I can sell polled rams all day long. In fact, I've seen a polled ram win grand champion. Was that one of yours, Cindy? That polled ram that won grand champion at Sheep Cycle 1 year? It was somebody's did. So they win. They do. They're excellent. They're perfectly acceptable animals. But aggressive rams that are danger in the corral. So those are, I think, oftentimes created. One time I had somebody do that to me in my corral. You guys familiar with round penning a horse? Well, I round penned that ram for 10 miles. And anytime I walked through that corral, man, he took off the other side and he did not ever want to mess with me again. But oftentimes the thing to do is just get rid of it. And so these are things that you need to consider that are outside of our ability to judge your sheep. What is the next one? Final message. I think I've covered that. Really need you to be successful, or want to continue to do it. And being insecure about your animals because you're listening to the noise pollution around you, or you're seeing a beautiful animal on Facebook. Oh, why don't mine look like that? Remember, we all started somewhere in our breeding program, and oftentimes it's people who are just starting because I don't sell my best, that are starting, and then you need to build from there. But it's important you know what that is, and it's important that when you're selling the products that are related to this animal, that you're able to explain to the public what they're buying. So if you have a crappy fleece and you're going to sell it to somebody, you tell them that it's a bad fleece, so that at least they know it's a bad fleece and if they still want it, but you're a reflection of all of us. Yeah, don't let anyone tell you what your sheep should look like. There's no such thing as the original sheep. They're all churros. They're beautiful animals, all of them. And we all have a dog and we all have a grand champion or a flock, but you need to figure out which ones those are and then what to do with your dogs. I think I have spoken of that. Oh, handouts. There's Ingrid Painter has some great words about the flock diversity and why we see the differences in our sheep. There's another one about the long-haired. There's more fleece information, Kemp, if you're confused about what Kemp might look like. And then another one on, and Kyle has brought in some samples of varying open, what an open fleece might look like. Just so you know, a good handle is soft. It'll feel soft, even though of course they're soft. So please come up and take a look at these. Oh, anybody have any registration issues? Some of you don't know anything about the sheep that you have. There's not much we need on these forms to be registerable. So if you want to look at what I highlighted that is the bare minimum, feel free to come up if you need courage. Just send in your paperwork.
So are there any questions within the room? I can't see it. Questions for Robin?
Any comments?
Comment?
I couldn't really see the picture on the faces. So is that based on how our names come?
It's the base, the whole base is covered, and that's definitely in the page in the PDF, because that was what I put on there. You'll see it better there. Yeah.
So I guess we'll shut down. Thank you very much, Robin.
Yeah, I really didn't make this thing, interesting, we are the so. You guys are all doing a good job, just no more, we need more luster.